Moin everyone, welcome back to another art fight drawing. Today I'm trying out my water-soluble graphite pencils as I mentioned in my last art fight drawing. Before we start, here are some quick swatches. They are supposed to come in different shades based on their hardness, but based on only the swatches I couldn't tell much of a difference, but once I started drawing it became a lot more noticeable. They are also partially erasable once they are dry. Not as well as regular graphite, but enough to get some interesting effects, I think. Now that this little swatch intro is over, let's start on today's drawing. The character I picked is called Silas and owned by MG Bear. I actually bookmarked him for my maybe list a while ago while browsing the Artfight website because he reminded me of Jinju Ito's Uzumaki, and I am a Jinju Ito fan, so I couldn't resist. And once I decided to use the graphite pencils, Silas was the obvious choice since his design is almost entirely grayscale. One thing I realized pretty quickly, and I'm going to mention it here because you're going to see it in the video, is that I don't like the traditional way of using watercolor pencils. Instead, I started to lift the graphite with a wet brush directly from the pencil, or making swatches on a different piece of paper and lifting the color off from there. I suspect it's because I'm used to regular watercolor and it's the closest you can get to watercolor paints. Beside all the graphite, regular and water soluble, I also used some inks, red for his hair and a bit of the background, and white to add a few more highlights and define the eye covering thing a bit more. I also added some gold paint for his epaulets and zipper, and finished everything off with a black pencil to bring out a few more details. Now that I've given those graphite pencils a proper try, I can safely say they are not for me. But to be fair, I'm not the biggest fan of watercolor pencils either. I always end up using them more like watercolors instead of how you're supposed to use them, and at that point I could just use watercolors. And I'm pretty sure I actually have graphite watercolor paint somewhere. Still, it was a fun experiment. But huge respect to everyone who has mastered watercolor pencils. You make it look so easy. But that's it for today. Happy art fight and stay hydrated.